over here that. Because then it doesn't give an opportunity for it doesn't give an opportunity to hear other people's perspectives. So so what we thought we would do is we would just like we would just pick a topic and then everyone shares their perspectives, and then that way we can go deeper into the discussion. And actually we had a similar discussion like this on Sunday. So on Sunday we had a Q&A session. Actually, Sam had logged in. So we had a Q&A session on Sunday. It was quite fun because people. So we asked people to write questions, and people had a lot of interesting questions. So there were a lot of questions on spirituality, intuition, how to not get distracted in life, distress times, how to get out of distress. So so we were thinking that maybe we can just continue the thread of that conversation and talk about the journey of a seeker, the journey of a seeker. But I think, before we start, maybe we can just have a round of introductions. You may start.
What kind of interaction? Introduction. Introductions.
Yes.
My name's Finn. I've been living in Richmond for 2 years now. I'm from South Island.
Whereabouts?
Glennon.
Okay.
Different. Difference.
Yeah, quite difference. I've sort of always been interested in spirituality. Since I was a kid, I was reading all sorts of philosophies and things. So, it's just been a drive. It's kept me going over the years. Yeah.
And what do you do here?
I'm a picture frame.
Really?
Picture frame, yeah.
Wow.
So I work out in Kurnu.
Yeah.
And picture frames.
Do you like such stuff?
Yeah, exactly.
And on all types of canvases.
Not just canvases, but like photographs and things. Yeah. All sorts of funny jobs. Yeah. That's about it.
I'm Sam. Lived in Auckland my whole life. Came here a while ago, so I went to Buckley Lounge in Wellington. Kind of stumbled upon that, and basically from there, just kind of felt at home. I just went along, and everyone was like super just friendly, and so I came up here, and I've always had like a urge, and always thought there was something more. I've been reading quite a few books, and just want to get into it more and find out more about spirituality and everything else.
I'm Jacob, also from Glennon, actually, with friends growing up. And, probably my closest friend who, is interested in similar things I am, like a esoteric level, so I've been pretty interested my whole life and sort of deviated away and come back in circles and read like a lot of books, but just seems at a certain point, like right now, I feel like I've reached a point where there's no amount of theory at a certain level that can help you if you're not putting yourself into a community of like-minded people. There just seems to be this inherent barrier of resistance. You kind of can't make alone, and that's kind of why I'm here there. And I've been here once before. And Chirag Ahuja is my boss, he's a marketing guy. I thought I was too nervous to come by myself, so I'm going to drag this guy.
Nice. What do you do in marketing?
I'm the content marketing manager.
Oh, nice.
Chirag, like all this stuff.
Yeah, I remember you coming last year.
Yeah, I definitely remember seeing
Got some great memories.
This is the yoga class, right? No.
This one.
This
It was
one,
first
yeah.
Wujrasina run.
Yeah.
So do you guys know each other? Or
Yeah, we do.
I know you too. Know you?
No,
Oh, you
first time
just
in-
met. Okay. So my name is Maya, and originally grew up in India, but I've been in Auckland for almost 5 years now. And what else? Yeah, I volunteer at the Loft, teach yoga, meditation. Love to attend these kind of talks. It's very enlightening. And yeah, just like it's kind of enrich my spirituality and practice. So Loft is the best place so far that I've seen. Apart from Bhakti, actually, I love that.
Which year did you go to Bhakti?
2020, yes, June, so a few years ago. And actually, Swami was doing a speaking on Sunday night. I went along and he had us, speaking. It's like, wow.
Nice. Cool. My name is Munja. Munja like Ninja, but not Ninja. And yeah, I also volunteer at the Loft. Possible. Yeah, and like as I could relate to what you were saying, Jacob, right? Yeah, that at a certain point you just realize that that to make some spiritual progress you need people. You need a community of like-minded people. Because that really inspires you. Yeah, and that's what I found at the Loft. It's just really nice, to be among like-minded people who have similar goals. Yeah. Nice. So,
Are people watching us?
This has been.
So, so our topic for today, as I was saying before, we were thinking of just having a discussion on the journey of the seeker. On the journey of the seeker. So, personally for myself, like I can think, I think it's interesting that most of you actually said that, that you were always interested in spirituality, that even when you guys were young. But I think in my case, I can't say that I was really interested in spirituality when I was young, but I think I was just very fed up with, with just the way society is. Especially because coming from India, like India is a very, at that time, when I was younger, like it's a very stereotyped society. It just seems in India, that kids grow up, they go to, uni, get jobs, really struggle hard to get high-paying jobs, buy a house, get a mortgage, buy a house, and then get married and have kids and die. And I was just like, what's the point of all this? That what's the point? That why do people get married? Why do people want to have kids? And then they get married and they have kids, and it just feels like it just doesn't make sense. So I was just quite fed up. And I was like, yeah, and to me it just didn't make any sense. And at that point I felt like I wasn't seeking because I didn't think that there are maybe some alternative options. So I wasn't thinking like that. And so I just felt like, what's the point to life? And at some point, I was like, maybe I should just commit suicide because I don't want to go through this. I don't want to do this. Yeah, but I definitely can't say that I was seeking. But until at some point in my life, I met someone. And that person was on a spiritual journey. And then he told me about it. And so I was like, okay, maybe there are alternative paths. Yeah, but until then, I don't think I was seeking. So what do you guys, would you guys like to share that in your life, maybe at what point did you realize that you were seeking, or at what point did you start seeking? What was you guys remember?
I can start.
Yeah.
So I sort of grew up with a family who was pretty anti-Christian. Not satanic, but they were. It's hard to tell because they weren't really atheists, nor were they. I suppose they were agnostic, but more along the lines of really didn't like structured religion. But I had a best friend in there as well, whose parents were very Christian, and I didn't. I liked the idea because they kind of told me stories about these sort of revelations, and one of them was quite fanatical, but they were both very committed. But one of them was, revelations like Kali Yuga, all he was thinking about was the end of the world. It seemed counterproductive to me, and still does that. Why are you so excited to get to this point? That's, I guess that's interesting, right? Like it's probably the most interesting, like explosive part of the Bible anyway. But I was always talking to these guys, and they had just had some pretty interesting experience that sounded supernatural to me. And so I read the Bible a little bit and started seeking that way. And I guess it's from then it's just been a process of whittling down what it isn't, rather than finding out what it is, sort of slowly realizing what I don't think it is. And this guy over here has helped me a lot because he introduced me to some alternative things like Rudolf Steiner. Through that, I've gone and like looked into other things like people that are Vivekananda and people like that, or the Gita stuff. But some of the more modern interpreters of like some of the texts. And yeah, but the beginning basically was just had to find my own way. I just sort of had started to realize that what might be taking shape is always supposed to happen. There's just certain amounts of, it has to be stripped away from it before you can sort of get to a point. You don't really seem to have much control over when that arrives.
So that's when start seeking.
Yeah, sort of, yeah, from through other people.
To other people.
But I never needed it because I grew up very angry.
Yeah, for me, it was when I had a low point in my life, it kind of just hit me, and I was questioning, like, this must be something else. And I also had real bad suicide for a few years, and then I went to church for the first time, and then kind of saw just these people so kind of seem just happy, and it's hard to kind of explain, but I just saw something through it, and throughout the years I've just been focusing on kind of growing spiritually, and that's led me to I guess a lot of not literal fruits, but kind of spiritual fruits. Now I'm just focused on how can I improve, getting into all the books, and so I just in the darkest time, I guess, and through all the struggles, I just kind of found myself getting into it, and that's I guess how it all started. Through all the struggles.
Yeah, well, for me it's quite different because, my parents were they're Christian, but more generally spiritualist. So there was always sort of that background. They were quite big on the best principles, live your life well and everything. So that was there. But I guess more recently it's sort of clicked a bit more with like how to actually put that into practice, and found it a bit easier to understand sort of the essences behind things. I don't really know where I'm going with that. But it's starting to make more and more sense as you go further.
For myself, when I was in school, I used to often think because there's so much pressure at school, especially in India, you have to make a quick decision. What do you actually want to do in life? Do you want to be an engineer, doctor, lawyer? There are only quite limited choices, which give you like a good career and good money. So the society, everyone is like actually pushing you to do that. So in school, I used to often wonder that any kind of occupation you take, they're always trying to fix a problem. Like so doctors are trying to fix health problems, engineers are trying to fix problems, lawyers trying to fix problems. So what do the spiritualists really do? What kind of problems do they solve? Because spirituality is also equally like a career in India, or there isn't really much benefits. The people choose that path. So then slowly, as I started reading books like Bhagavad Gita, I found that actually the main problem that the spiritualist focuses is on fixing the problem of death. So I was like, wow, that's pretty, that's very different. And no one talks about it. So anyway, I wanted to kind of pursue that, but my parents and everyone say, oh, it's just that's the useless thing. Don't go there. Just go to university, focus, get somewhere in life. So I had to conform to those things and go through uni. So I had to put that in the back burner, that kind of thing. And then after it worked sufficiently enough, I should fulfill that desire. So, yeah.
Interesting, and how different people like come in different ways. In the Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 7. So Bhagavad Gita is a conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. So Krishna is telling Arjuna that normally, when people are that when people are in distress, there are 4 types of people actually become seekers. They start to seek a spiritual path. One is when someone is in distress. And then one is when someone is looking for gain, when someone is looking for money, like often what we call as prosperity religion. And then when someone is inquisitive about, when someone is actually inquisitive about seeking the supreme truth. And then there are those who are just curious about different spiritual paths. So I think in this group we can see that there's I can tell that definitely I came out of distress and Sam as well, but then you guys are like the curious types. Yeah. So it's so when we come on so I was just thinking, that personally for myself, when I decided to take, so I think it was really actually like when I came to New Zealand, because when I came to New Zealand, I came here to study, and I think within a couple of months of my study, I was feeling very frustrated because by then I felt like I would tick all the boxes of what I want to do with my life. And an overseas experience was kind of the last thing. So when I came to New Zealand and then doing that as well, it wasn't bringing me the happiness that I wanted to. So I thought that now I really need to actually pursue a spiritual path. So I had a friend, and she had she had done a couple of these silent meditation retreats. So yeah, and so I thought that she's spiritual. So what do you guys think? Do you guys so what do you guys think? What are the things that people do in their lives when they want to be spiritual? Or what are the things that people do in their lives who are spiritual?
Don't conform, just kind of create their own path, I guess. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, but like, how would that look like? Like for example, I know that with this friend, I think like every 6 months she would go for a silent meditation retreat. So what do you guys think people normally do when they want to hear?
Well, with some sort of renunciation usually, or some sort of sanctification.
Like give up.
Yeah, or you give up, or often you give something up. I think that's pretty crucial as well from my own personal experience, is that you can't energetically actually elevate yourself to a higher spiritual level without having stripped away the things that just on a physiological level keep you down mentally.
Is like not letting yourself be affected by things in a more general way than something else.
Yeah.
Staying on the true path.
How would you, how would that show like externally, like someone on the look at you? Is this like the tennis?
Yes.
Hey.
I guess it's kind of being in like a calm state
Yeah,
where everyone else is like, and so I'm just like, just totally calm.
yeah.
Yeah.
You want to sit here, Mitch?
I don't know what I'm doing.
If you sit here, if you sit here, you won't read anything.
Oh, that's it. Okay.
No one's watching you anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking like in terms of more tangible things, you know, like what are some things that people, what are things that, you know, that maybe when someone starts a spiritual path, what are the kind of things that yeah, good point at taking care of the body.
Depends how new they are, I suppose. A lot of people start preaching. A lot of
Yeah.
people start preaching to everyone they know.
Become a preacher.
Yeah.
I once went on a retreat and I'm just curious, and they were like, most people had a certain way of, they looked a certain way, like they had long hair and piercings and tattoos. This is a certain, you know?
Yeah, they buy loose sweating pants.
But-
Well, I call it
And like those
Thailand tattoos.
t-shirts with, you know,
Right,
like
yeah.
something, yeah, Om or something like that.
Yes.
So it's like a, you know, like a standard
Yeah.
image that comes to my mind when I think the spiritual. Long hair,
Yeah.
beard. I mean, I wasn't talking about you. So yeah, it's just external.
Can you see him?
I'm more curious and study.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, study books, right? Yeah. It's interesting that all of you, everyone was into reading books, right?
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, all of you said that you started reading books. You started saying that you were reading a book and you talked about fix the problem of it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess there's a bit of distress as well. Yeah. Not everything's nice and happy in the world. There's always something.
I guess as well, it could be kind of like having different values than maybe a lot of different people.
Yeah.
Instead of money, like spiritual or more not temporary material kind of things.
Maybe like different, yeah, like
Yeah.
spiritual goals and
Yeah.
material goals.
What about those who like do psychedelics and stuff?
Right.
They have spiritual experience too. Okay.
Absolutely.
You guys tried that?
Absolutely.
Do it, so it goes. I like monster.
That's what confirmed it for me.
Yeah.
All of us were that trouble. Anything else? No one mentioned yoga.
Yeah.
True.
Prayer.
Hmm.
meditation as well.
Oh, yeah.
Something in there in journal writing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Once or twice.
Yeah, and that's obviously been like life changing. Like, so I like to get my thoughts down.
Yeah.
But yeah, journaling is probably pretty underrated. You know? Yeah. And when people think journaling, you mean they think you mean it's like sentences every single day. You know, like there's a massive amount of, but it's just it's small things. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I have written down my thoughts a few times in my life, but not that many. But I've always enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, I always write too much and then try to hold myself up to that huge tangent.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I can't do this every day.
Yeah.
How about like living on a farm and growing your own
Ah, yes.
veggies?
Yeah.
What we would call it?
Sustainable living.
Sustainable.
Yeah.
Sustainable.
People think that's, yeah.
Lifestyle.
And some people might start to pursue some sort of penance as well. Start to take accountability for things they've done, through actions or apologies, or some people might start to make amends.
Unless the mess. Well, got quite a few points
Yeah,
there.
the board's full. Pronunciation, giving up, eating healthy, preaching, sustainable, taking up some penance, changing your look, studying books, silent meditation, journaling, having different values, psychedelic drugs, yoga, prayer. I was thinking, that about that with some of these. So, for example, let's say eating healthy. How do you think that eating healthy makes one spiritual?
Resisting resisting temptation, and instead of just grabbing something that's in front of you, taking the time to, I guess, just create something from scratch rather than just getting fast food.
Oh, so personal strength. All that.
It's what helps you look out. The problem when someone to me like yoga and healthy eating and meditation and renunciation, like this is eating healthy as a form of renunciation, I suppose, for a lot of people. But I think it's just to work with like more subtle forms of energy, like, in order to reach a lot of those things. It's a prerequisite in order to actually have the right vessel or tools to be able to make this easier for yourself. I've found before is when I've been drinking alcohol, eating bad food, and doing things alone. It's very hard to try and actually pursue these things with any foundation. When you're in that mode, it feels a lot more natural. It doesn't feel hard. It doesn't feel like it's willpower, actually. It just feels like that's where you should be anyway.
I just want to clarify, eating healthy as in what are we saying? Like specific, like vegan or just,
Is that what you want to know?
or just eating healthy in general?
Just in general, really, nothing specific. Yeah.
So if someone eats
fresh
that-
food. I
fresh
suppose.
food,
Right. Yeah. Organic.
Yeah. I mean, definitely that's probably non-violent because someone having a vegetarian vegan diet, that's healthy. And it's healthy for the environment as well. Maybe besides being healthy for the individual.
Yeah, so there's that karmic element,
Yeah.
which is,
I mean, it's helpful
But,
for like physical health, basically.
yeah.
But yeah. And I know quite a few vegetarians who don't think they're spiritual. They just they just eat it, so it's healthy. It's just logical. I guess I don't know if all spirituals also eat vegetarian or healthy food, but you know, if that's true as well.
Yeah, it's like, it's like you meet so many people who are vegetarian, we get to do spirituality. Yeah. So, but at the same time, I should say, that definitely having a vegetarian or vegan diet is non-violent. So, so for, and spiritual people, they are, like any general spiritual path, the most essential element is of non-violence. So I think anyone who is, who is following the general spiritual path, that will be an essential item in their life, having a non-violent diet. Yeah, but just having a non-violent diet in itself doesn't mean that they are spiritual. But you will automatically see it in someone's life who is spiritual. Does it make sense?
Does I understand why the Bhagavad Gita says that, I understand it, but kind of don't think it's exclusive. To be spiritual, you have to follow that diet. I'm not saying it's not beneficial. Yes, there's a lot of other deities and religions and spiritual people and renowned masters as well who didn't follow it and still seem to have achieved some pretty bright level of wisdom.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, but then also we know that a spiritual life is like a journey, and actually, like it's explained, like the Bhagavad Gita explains that there is no limit to spiritual realization because like matter has a limit, but spirit has no limit. By nature, spirit is unlimited. So there is no limit to spiritual realization. Like, it always increases. So, yeah, so someone, definitely I totally agree that there are a variety of spiritual paths around the world. And many of them are not, many of them don't necessitate one to follow a vegetarian or a vegan diet. And, does that mean that those people are not making spiritual progress? Yeah, definitely they are. But then there are levels. Yeah, it's like almost, like for example, I can think of, a student going to a medical school, so someone can study to be a general practitioner, they come out after 5 years, or, then you can become, like you can specialize, and then you can specialize even more, and specialize even more. So, you can just, you can keep going higher and higher, but it just depends on how much you're putting in. Yeah. Because this comes out, like it's explained in the Bhagavad Gita, that the compassion for the soul is self-realization. So self-realization, it essentially means, that we are seeing our spirit, that we see the spiritual nature in everyone. And when we see spiritual nature in everyone, then, then we see them as a part of the same family tree. And then naturally that compassion arises that actually we're part of the same family tree. Yeah. So yeah, so for eating healthy. And then what do you think about having this outlook, long hair, loose pants? How does that make one spiritual?
It's like not kind of not caring so much about fitting into this kind of box, like short hair, and like you have to have short hair to make a good impression on others. But instead, it's just like I'm gonna let it grow and just kind of be free.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly it, I think.
Not getting like indifferent to what people
But
do.
then you get those people that dress like that because to fit in with the people who dress like that.
Gotta fit in somewhere.
Yeah.
Either this camp or that camp. I guess externals do create a mood as well. Like if you're going to work, you don't want to be in your hippie clothes. You want to be
Yeah.
in your work clothes. So,
Yeah.
like if someone sits down for meditation, it's nice to have that flowing hair and incense and essential oil and all this kind of thing. Just create some oil.
It helps you, why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You feel more authentic.
I mean, having said that, yeah, I always think of the other way as well. Someone who's lighting an incense and having long hair can't be said that he or she is spiritual. It
Yeah.
does help, but it's not the only criteria for categorizing someone else. They could be doing something really opposite.
It's also just comfortable. Right. Very nice pants. I mistake someone for a spiritual person. I'm just, this is just my pajamas.
What about silent meditation? Have any of you gone for those retreats? So as I was saying before that, there was a friend of mine, she went for a retreat and then I was just really inspired. I thought, wow, like 10 days of no talking. So I went, and I actually went in India, and the way they do it there is really nice because they have their headquarters there. So there were like easily about, I would say, maybe 300 people, and it's like a massive auditorium. And basically, your schedule for the entire day is that you're just sitting. You just sit for the entire day, and you have like 3 or 4 trainers, and they're in the front of the room. And then there's there's like a there's like an audio track thing. And like one sitting session is of 2 to 3 hours. And they ask you to sit, like right at the start of the session, they ask you to make a determination that is you will sit straight. Because this mindfulness is mainly about observing the sensations in your body. And so they just ask you that, then try and sit straight, like don't do that. And then basically the point is that just by sitting straight like that, by observing the sensations, even when you start to get uncomfortable, you just sit like that. And you just, like don't pay attention to it. And it's like day 2, I mean, on day 3, I tried to run away, I took my suitcase, but then they didn't let me go. Because, they keep your phones, they keep everything. No pen, paper, nothing. I mean, here it's not like that, but in India they do it very strictly. So they didn't even let me go.
Wow.
The lady, she took my suitcase. She said, "No, you have to stay for the whole thing, and you can't talk to anyone." And it was like it was so painful just to sit like that. And they just kept saying, just focus on your breathing. And I found, that my mind was just getting more and more busy. Instead of going quieter, it was just getting more and more busy because basically, like the first 2, 3 days, I was just thinking of what happened in the past week, then the past month, but like day 4, what happened 4 years back, and then day 5, what happened 5 years back, and then this happened in my childhood, and day 10, like I was a complete wreck. So like really like all my, past memories and traumas, just everything had come out, and then it was day 10, and now I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I was so depressed at the end of it. And then basically the point is that when you go home, you're meant to practice that silent meditation every day for 2 hours. And I genuinely wanted to try it. So I would do every day for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. There's no way I could do for 2 hours. But then after 3, 4 days, I just couldn't keep up. Yeah, and then so I thought that after 6 months or so, I thought that the last time that I did it, maybe I just didn't do it properly because it seems like so many people are into it. So I should give it a try again. So I went again for another one. And I had the exact same experience. And so on my way back, they had organized a bus because this was way out in the country. And so there were a few volunteers. And so I was speaking to them, that do you guys do this every day for 2 hours? And they said, no, we also just do it, like once every now and then. And then I was like, geez, like, these people, they're volunteering here. And, like, some of them are the trainer, and if they themselves are not doing it, then it's like, but basically, it's like I didn't feel so bad about myself after that because I was like, okay, yeah, maybe this one's not for me. So I've met people who've had wonderful experiences at these retreats. And I've also met people who have had similar experiences like mine. So yeah, I'm just not sure about how much it really helps you to become spiritual. I mean, but in my case, it definitely helped me in the sense, like it was something like what you were saying, Jacob, that it's a process for you, it's a process of identifying what it isn't. So for me, definitely it was like, okay, that this type of meditation is not for me, and that I must find something else. So that's how it helped me. Yeah, but there are some, not some, I'm sure that there are a lot of people who find a lot of benefit from it. Mindfulness is the rage. So yeah, but I'm just not sure it's right.
Great story.
Yeah, very good story.
You should definitely not do it in India.
Yeah.
They won't let you run away.
Yeah.
So I really don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think it helps you to become spiritual?
Those are those Visapana
Yeah.
ones over here, right?
Vipassana, yeah.
Vipassana.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, they're always booked out. I've looked
They're
at
always
them, but
booked
they're
out,
always
yeah.
booked out.
Yeah, but I know that here they're not as strict because I've met many people who've gone here and they've taken pens and phones and they're very strict about that.
I feel like there'd be value in finishing it. I think it's like been hard for me anyway to sit down and meditate for any meaningful amount of time. I don't even know what meaningful means, like it's hard to do. So it'd just be nice to have some sort of like guidance or tutelage, and if you're with people as well, having some sense of like, well, we're all in this together. you can talk about it, like your experiences, but who knows?
It could probably be a one-off experience, but not something that you would carry with you all your life.
Yeah, it might be something that kickstarts you.
But just a taster, just like you want, if you were traveling different places, not that you want to settle there. Just go have an experience somewhere.
It definitely allows for a lot of introspection.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
what else is there to do?
What else? This first one, actually, renunciation. It reminds me of the strength of being minimalistic. We see that some people, who want to be spiritual, like they move into tiny homes, really do a massive clean out, and just trying to be as simple as possible. What do you think? Do you think it helps to become spiritual?
So for me, like, I guess, like for me, I've done it like not like a minimalist, like getting rid of everything, but slowly slowly getting rid of things, and I guess it's not attaching your value onto possessions, and realizing that's just what they are, and your value has, yeah, it's kind of two separate things. I guess it kind of depends on the individual.
Yeah, I think if you really depend on things.
You definitely have to work less hard because you don't want nice stuff.
Yeah. And I think it would also reduce your distractions. I think it possibly saves, I think it would save time. You know, like just consider that if you have less things in your house, you know, like less time goes in the things and
Yeah.
maintenance.
I don't know how sustainable it is though.
Mm.
Like say if it's summer and I have this, okay, I'm gonna become a minimalist, throw away all the winter clothes. And the winter comes, I'm like, throw away my summer clothes, get the winter clothes. Quite expensive.
I actually did that once when it was my first year in New Zealand.
Okay.
Because I came in winter and then when it came to summer, I was like, actually, I just thought, it's so stupid. I thought that this is the weather, this weather is going to stay.
And especially in New Zealand, 4 seasons a day, you need all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, and it's really interesting you say that. It reminds me, actually, I know one person. So they wanted to, because they wanted to live very simply, so they moved out to the country. And they built themselves a tiny home. So it was just like this couple, and they had one child, you know, like a small child. I think she was 2 or 3. And just like it's not, it definitely wasn't easy, you know, but I think they were like doing quite well, nice and happy, you know, just 3 of them. But because even though the house was tiny, but you know, it was like in a big garden area, so the child had a lot of area to play with. But then my friend, she had another child. And then the husband was like, geez, I need my space. And so then he built another unit outside, like a cabin. And then the next time I went, there was another cabin.
Oh, bread.
So every bedroom is equal to a cabin.
Yeah, so it's a good point that we just don't know how sustainable it is, you know, because then eventually there were 2 other cabins built, and it's like if you put it all together,
It's
you
a
know,
house.
it's a house. And there was also a tent, which was up for the grandma who's visiting. So the grandma has her own.
We want these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I know, it makes sense, right? So it's also cost sustainable. It is in the long run.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't think it.
Yeah, finding the balance.
Yeah. And also it's like, you know, our lives are so transient, isn't it? Like this family, maybe they weren't thinking that they were going to have the second child. Yeah, as you know, like we might be living alone in a certain situation, but then, you know, like someone else comes along and they have different needs, and so you have to just accommodate. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, maybe I think that though, renouncing or giving up material possessions is sort of the last thing, the least important of those. Because I mean, what's the point if you haven't renounced like traumas and behavioral patterns and beliefs and attachments to things that are actually much more internal before you deal with, you know, what the point is giving up your clothes and stuff if you're actually just an asshole anyway.
But it's easier to give up your clothes, isn't it? That's the It's much more hard to give up subtle things.
Yeah. You're sleeping on the floor, but you're going to the bar every day, you know?
Yeah, you can't do that.
I don't know, I always feel like usually spirituality and these kind of things are quite external initially. Because that's what you can actually do something
It's
about.
easy, yeah. You know, it's like touch and feel.
Yeah. You can see yourself in the mirror, you can see your things, and you can see your life, so it's easy to fix those things and change them.
You can actually measure it.
Yeah, measure, yeah.
Yeah.
Being introspective, and that's like hard work.
Yeah. changing things on a certain level is, yeah, it's very hard because it's like it can just even take so long to even realize it, that this is something that I need to change. Yeah.
Or even that I have changed it.
What else? Psychedelic drugs. These are pretty common, right? People do drugs a lot. For a social experience.
Yeah, getting more into it. Yes.
Do you think it helps not to become spiritual?
Yeah, I think people get it from different methods. I know I did, but that's the most profound and powerful experience with God I've ever had. It was in my mum's garden. I felt like it was a revelation and direct sort of. You know, the only time it was explained in any way that I kind of agree with was when I read Ramakrishna's explanation on samadhi. And I thought that's kind of how I felt in that moment. And but then there's no, you didn't earn it, you didn't deserve it. You took some sort of like plant from the ground and you like sort of created a ladder to experience something which you haven't really earned or anything. But I think it's a really powerful tool for people who might go their whole lives without any thought into spirituality.
It's a good
to realize
first step, maybe. Maybe. Yeah.
I think for a lot of people it shows them there's something more than
There's
you
something more.
realize
Yeah.
than you've been led to believe.
It can initiate a lot of people into
Mm.
into
And
spirituality.
these people never come back from that point. The same. In a good way.
But many people can also get addicted.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite the same as like other drugs. But yeah, you if you have a bad experience on psychedelics, you learn a lesson from it. It's not enjoyable.
Does it like ruin your brain or something? Like, does it cause any damage?
I don't
What do
know.
you mean by bad experience?
Because it warps your perspective on so much. It's the way you consider your life on a day-to-day basis and how your mind's plasticity works. You follow like a lot of predictable patterns, it seems. But when you're on that, it really opens up the field of consciousness to places you haven't been in a long time.
You see too much.
Yeah.
Right. See too much, perhaps.
Yeah. So that feeling you feel internal and paranoid and stuff, sometimes people start that question of thing. That can get really, really powerful and magnified. And then you won't want to be addicted to something like that. But a lot of it's where you do it. My belief will always be it's a really powerful tool. And I think more people should do it, especially people who are afraid of death.
I was also wondering, like, how if someone wants to have a spiritual experience, how is it possible to access the realm of spirit through something material? Like, how can a plant or a herb, which is matter at the end of the day, help you access a spiritual realm that is beyond your sensual experience? You know, like I can't even see my mind or I can't see my breath. You know what I mean? I can't see air. So like accessing spirit through a plant. I mean,
Yeah, the experience I'm talking about was like, because I've done it quite a few times and it happened to me once or twice actually. But when the first time it happened, it was like it didn't feel like it was, felt like it was a moment that was given to me.
But could it also be like on a mental thing?
It was a very, very convincing mystical experience.
Hallucination or something.
No, it was beautiful.
I guess it could kind of have like trigger a massive self-realization or something along those lines. Yeah, and then make you aren't treated.
Yeah.
I would hazard that, like, when people go into deep meditation, that there are certain brain studies that would show that activate in a way in which you can get into much different space of consciousness. And, people talk about the pineal gland and things like that, and that excretes serum and all of those chemicals to have these mystical experience already exist within the body. And taking those things, and if all the stars happen to align, that freely happens from a herb rather than from years of dedicated focus. So it's like a cheat, but it's not like I can sit here today and get back to that beautiful space. But you can't just keep trying to chase it at the same time.
So it doesn't happen every time.
No way. No way.
A chance.
Lots of people have never had it.
It's, oh, okay.
Well, that actually explains that you can't really access the spiritual realm, because if it were that guaranteed, it would happen every time.
Yeah.
So it's a hiddenness, and
Yeah.
and even if you hit it, you don't know if you're hitting the right thing or.
I disagree with you.
Yeah.
I do think if you had it, like, I know the experience I had wasn't. I knew it immediately that there was life after death, and there were a lot of things that happened inside of me that wasn't me. My ego disappeared completely, and I forgot who I was. And I won't bore you with too much of the detail.
No, it's just
Interesting.
What is the time?
7.
Okay. So I think there's one. So if you actually see the items that we have here, there's this one last one, which is books.
Reading books,
Yeah.
study.
Reading books, studying books. Do you think that helps one with the spiritual?
I'd say up to a point. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me, it just gets me more curious about, everything really. So, I'd say up to a point as well. Just kind of gets me more curious. Which helps, I guess, in one way.
So, up to a point. After that, you have to try psychedelics. No, I'm joking.
I mean, I guess, even books like they're written by different authors and they may be giving their own perspectives. So it may not necessarily be your perspective. It's someone else's. They wanted to share with people, so they just write books. So it's just basically, for me, when I read spiritual books, later on I felt like I was just taking on others' opinions as information. It was just an information to me. It necessarily didn't bring any transformation. I learned the information about it. I could talk to people about it, but on a personal level, my life didn't change much. So, I did read a few books, but it was interesting. Okay, it's a different perspective. It's like enliven my intellect. I didn't change as a person.
So I think if you just look at all the points that we've discussed here, I think we would agree that I think for most of them, we've all said that that these are all helpful. Like how Jacob was saying, that someone who has these, who's doing a few of them, for such a person it would be easier. Like taking up a spiritual practice would be easier. And as you guys were saying, that it helps to a certain point. Like for example, how you were saying that if someone is eating healthy, then it shows, that they're sort of building their willpower. They're building their strength, by saying no to stuff that's not good for them. Yeah, and then, similarly for other stuff as well. So we see that some things are helpful and maybe some things are maybe not so helpful, but we see that all these things, they are in different areas. So like some things are helping the body, some things are helping the mind, and some things are helping the intelligence. So, so we can see that, like I think it would be safe to say that just in of themselves, they are not sufficient, but they are helpful in having, they would help someone in their spiritual practice. But for example, just because someone is eating healthy, just by eating healthy, one wouldn't become spiritual. And similarly, just by wearing loose pants and having long hair, they wouldn't become spiritual. And similarly, just by studying books, they wouldn't become spiritual. But like these things, they would all help in the person's path. So I guess we could say, that these things they're like a qualification to take up a spiritual practice. What do you guys think?
For the springboard.
Like a springboard, yeah.
But eat healthy, more likely to follow a spiritual path.
I guess
Have
because,
a healthy body, so it'll be easy.
and also, you have that sense of control.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have some willpower, you have
Sense
some
control.
strength.
Mm.
Yeah. Similarly, if you have some renunciation, if you're doing some penance, if you're doing some meditation, it shows you're conducive to, you're willing to make the time in your life for a practice. If you're studying books, shows that you're willing to learn. Yeah, so these habits so the point is that in of themselves, they wouldn't, they won't have much value, they're like zeros. But like how when you add a 1 in front of a 0, then it actually gains some value.
Right.
Yeah, so, so we might see people and, we might see their externals, and fair enough, like externals are important, but just because the externals are there, we can't say that the internal, is that they are a spiritual person. Yeah, so because, we are all going through different phases in our life, and then when we start a spiritual journey, like naturally, whatever we are doing, most often, it's informed by society. It's like we are looking at others, and then we are doing things. So I guess the value of this conversation is an understanding that we may do these things, but just these things in themselves may not help us to become spiritual. That they don't actually constitute a spiritual practice.
Just increase the likelihood.
Yes, yeah, but they're helpful.
Mm.
Yeah, it's if an example comes to my mind, like someone who's learning to swim. If they just stand in the pool and put what are they called? Yeah, the floaties, but they don't do anything.
Right.
Yeah, but it's like, but if they actually start to, like flap their hands and legs, then the floaties will help. But if they just stand there, then with the floaties on, it's not really good.
I guess that could be like kind of tools as well. And with the journey thing. So if you have all these tools, but you don't go on the journey, you have all the tools, but you use them, but you don't walk up. You say like the journey to the peak. That's what
Yes.
a lot of people say. It's kind of about how you use it and how to help it with your journey to get to where you want to be.
Yeah. It's like the example that Jacob was giving, that what's the use if you give up your clothes and you give up this, but actually, you don't renounce your bad habits. What were you saying there? That you don't
Instead of
renounce your,
behaviors and
Yeah,
habits and
correct.
such as
yeah,
more hold you back. And then maybe like one of the things about this list is the only thing that involves anyone else's penance. Like there's also lots of work you have to do regarding your fellow human being, right? To evolve spiritually.
Mm. Yeah,
So each one teach one. Learn yourself and then teach others.
Yeah.
That's what we say.
Yeah, but I mean, to learn as well, you don't just learn and then go teach, but you have to learn just through that experience with someone else, right? Like, a lot of the lessons I've had have been because of both myself and somebody else, either a problem or a family member or something. So that's what I've sort of realized in the last few years is that as much as I've tried, I can't do that. That can't be done alone.
yes.
Even the stuff by yourself, because one day you just get sick of yourself. You're like, I can't know how to do this.
Yeah. And I was also thinking, and this kind of raises the question, because what if, what if I'm someone who likes to wear tight clothes and I like to have short hair and I don't want to be a vegetarian and I don't want to eat non-violent food. I don't want to eat healthy. I don't want to, study books. I don't want to do yoga. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Then does it mean that I don't have the qualifications? Then does it mean that I can't take up a spiritual practice?
Pretty restricting, eh?
Yeah. So, hello.
Counting.
Counting. I know. So, so essentially like these, so like if we refer to the Bhagavad Gita, so Bhagavad Gita actually presents 3 yoga paths, like it presents 3 spiritual paths. And it explains that the path of Bhakti Yoga, it doesn't require any qualification. All that you need to do is that you just need to follow the practices of Bhakti Yoga. And then just by following those practices, then gradually everything else comes into place. Yeah, like for example, a person, like for example, a person who's following the practice of Bhakti Yoga will just eventually, naturally, become a vegetarian, like they will, and even though, like it may look like they're very rich and they have a lot of stuff in their life, but they don't have a possessive mentality. They don't think that they own things, that things belong to them and therefore, they're for them to use and exploit, but they actually, if they have things in their life, they're using these things in the service of, for helping others. Yeah, so that's,
Approaching it from the other direction.
yes, yeah. So that's also the other thing, that although we may have things that can help us, that can be a qualification, like for us to practice spiritual life. But if you have a practice, especially with something like Bhakti Yoga, then you don't need to do any of these things. Like there is actually no barrier.
What do you have to do in Bhakti Yoga?
So what you have to do in Bhakti Yoga is, so there are like the 2 main practices. One is actually the chanting of the mantra, and then it's also it's individual, like it's everyone has their own capacity. So like as you were saying, that we're all on a journey. So depending on what is your individual appetite, like for example, someone gets start with just 5 minutes a day. But the key thing is just to keep it steady. So like, okay, maybe I'm just going to do it for 5 minutes a day. And then this is the mantra that you chant. It's the Hare Krishna mantra. So you just chant it every day for 5 minutes. Maybe when you get up, or maybe when you're sitting on the bus, just maybe do it for 5 minutes. Or if you want, you can do it for 10 minutes. And it's like, just in doing this, you will see that, naturally, you will start to observe your mind. And, like even if you decide, okay, I'm going to sit and do this, like chant this mantra for 10 minutes, it means that you will naturally have to control your mind. You will build up your willpower. Things that are coming in your mind, you will naturally put them aside because you're focusing on the mantra. So this is one main practice, and then the other main practice is actually reading spiritual books. It's like reading the books that are there, that are actually presenting the science, so that you're not just doing it sentimentally, so that you actually understand scientifically why am I doing this, and what's the logic behind, what's the science behind doing this. So it's very scientific. So those are the two main practices. Yeah, and if you just do those two things, and if you don't do anything else, and you just sing. Yeah, and of course, I would say that the third very important thing is that is to actually come to places like the law of Bhakti, where you have people who are doing similar practices, because then that is inspiring. Otherwise, like out in the world, it seems like you're the only one who's thinking like that, and no one else is. Like everyone else is just busy pursuing material pursuits. Yeah, like as you were just saying in the start, that it's like it's important to have have a community, like have the right company that helps you forward for some inspiration. Yeah.
Six of you is gonna eat, or what is it?
Not me, not me.
Not you?
No. Me.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. I just want to make sure.
Sure. Yeah. Would you like to add anything?
No, I think that is pretty crystal clear to me.
Okay, cool. So we've discussed, spiritual journey, the journey of the seeker. What are things that people do when they are on a spiritual path. And then we've discussed how each of these habits, they are good in themselves. And like they are like, supporting aids, but just in of themselves, they don't have much value. But at the same time, if we are not able to adopt any of these practices, there's no need to get discouraged, because, like if you want to follow a spiritual path, without following these practices, then you can always follow Bhakti Yoga, and it's very simple, the two practices. And, you can just give it a try. It's like a laboratory experiment, you just give it a try. Yeah, if it works, but like with any experiment, you just decide to you just decide to complete the experiment. So for example, maybe you decide, okay, I'm going to do this for 21 days, and then you stick to it for 21 days, like that. You just complete the experiment, don't abandon the experiment. So I think next week we're going to have a similar conversation next week, and next week we're going to talk about, next week?
Like there are so many people are engaged in solving different problems in the world, but is it an ultimate problem that if that's solved, then all other problems automatically get solved?
Yeah, like there are so many causes, like there's the Red Cross, then the Cancer Society, support the poor people, support climate change. Like there are like a million causes, and essentially we see, that like all of us, we want to help everyone, right? But we have limited resources. So how do you decide which is the best cause to support? Yeah, because it's like, if you go on Queen Street, it's like every day, you have like 5 charities there. And it's like, if you had the money, you probably help each one of them. But you have limited resources, limited energy. So how do you decide that which is the best cause to like worth supporting? Yeah, which does good for everyone. So that's what we discussed next week. If you guys